Okay, thanks Terry for joining us today, and
No problem.
You're here to talk to us a little bit about middle years of schooling, integrated curriculum and that sort of thing. So it'd be great if you could just start off by talking a little bit about what you see to be the value of integration in the middle years.
Okay, I suppose my background is working on SOSE, Studies of Society and Environment, and in essence SOSE as a key learning area is an integrated beast itself. It's a bureaucratic construct which brought together all of the disciplines and fields of studies of the humanities. So in a way, working in SOSE is working in an integrated model to some extent anyway. But in terms of integrating SOSE with other key learning areas in the middle years, I think most people who are involved in curriculum development recognise the unique needs of learners in the middle years. One of the key things is engagement, and the lack of engagement, especially for some groups in the middle years. So one of the things that we've been encouraging is trying to find those connections between the key learning areas, either conceptual connections or connections between processes. One of the things that we looked at with science and SOSE was that we fundamentally have the same methodology of doing things. So that becomes a really useful way of kids understanding that you transfer knowledge from able to transfer knowledge from one set of learnings to another. So with middle years integration, we're really trying to look at ways in which you can make things interesting, engaging for young adolescents. The key thing with SOSE, especially, I suppose I'm sort of stumbling on that a bit because there's an impression, especially in the lower secondary part of the middle years, how boring it can be. And there's some fundamentally interesting things for young people that in the content of SOSE, and that's especially true when you integrate it with other areas. So.
So what would be some of those things?
Well, one of my key things that I often talk about with kids is globalisation, the idea of them being global citizens, because that's one particular integrating device that I think is everywhere, and you can see it in media, in their cultural pursuits, even something like sport. The idea of global connections is really important, and you can really attack a lot of the traditional disciplines through that context too. So historically, in terms of place and space, the environmental understandings of that, culture and identity, understanding different cultures, and of course the systems that make a global system operate. There's the economic systems, etc. So I think SOSE and globalisation are sort of really good bedfellows. That's one of the key ones. There's a number of other ones which I think probably go to a much smaller scale, and that's bringing things down to the local level. So in a way, kids don't realise how much of that content knowledge and ways of doing things are in the local environment. And it can be an environmental issue, or can be understanding groups within their communities or the heritage of the communities, etc. So that's two of the really broad ones, and we really try to encourage those big themes rather than some of the other ones that we've seen, especially in primary. Ones like the sea, which doesn't really leave you many places to go. So sometimes the theme is a nice little device rather than a device that you can really get some engaging learning around. So.
Okay. Well, what about the connection with the arts then? Do you think that SOSE and the arts do work well together in certain ways? In terms of being from a curriculum development perspective, SOSE, the arts, English and languages were usually farmed off into the same group of key learning areas, so we have some natural affinities there with the same people working on them and sharing ideas. But what I think the key thing is again, I think I talked about science, but the process is very similar. The ideas of creating, responding, reflecting, I think fits really neatly into a kind of inquiry approach that's used in SOSE or in any of the disciplines in SOSE. One particular strand, the media strand, I think has a natural affinity with SOSE because you know, we've been trying to steal it off the arts for years, so I think that's a really neat connection, probably more so in the broader understandings about the media rather than the ways of doing things, but there's also those connections too. You know, what a great thing to have a community awareness campaign about something and being able to actually use some media techniques to be able to present them. Also, the critical aspect of the arts, I think, is very much part of the way in which social scientists work. And fundamentally, the arts are a cultural you know, category of things that we need to study as part of a society or an environment too. So in terms of procedural stuff, I think we have some really strong connections, and conceptually I think the links are all over the place. But the thing I would push back on with that is to warn against the type of integration between SOSE and the arts where you do something about the coming of Europeans to Australia and you present it as a poster. I don't think the poster is actually the arts. You know, I think some of those kind of superficial integration doesn't do favours to any of the key learning areas. So, you know, that's one of the warnings I probably give to teachers about integration. So, yep.
That sort of gets on to my next question, which is about you know, what you think it is essential to retain when integration occurs that involves SOSE. So, you know, what sorts of things would you not want to see lost from the SOSE perspective? I suppose
you know, the SOSE is used a lot of times to colour a whole heap of different learning experiences. And one particular issue that I think that a lot of middle school teachers, and I'll say both primary and secondary, is when they do something that's based around literacy or English, to find the difference, they use a social perspective. You know, the novel might be historical or it might be contemporary about a particular cultural group, and then it's kind of that bit of SOSE is ticked off. But the fundamentals of SOSE are about using an inquiry approach. So that's, you know, inquiry is the base, the way of doing things, and that's the thing that we take from all the disciplines and fields of studies. So that's one of the things I wouldn't like to lose in integration, and I think that's something that teachers need to consider when they are integrating, and also about the depth of understandings of some of the concepts. Particularly in the cultural identity strand, I think that a lot of times is, you know, we'll read some, we've read some poetry by Kath Walker, who drew New Knuckle in English, so we can tick off the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander part of SOSE. Well, that's not really a deep understanding about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, so it's kind of the colour of the key learning area is okay, but the depth is the important thing. And I suppose what I talk to teachers about is doing some things well rather than trying to tick off a lot of things, because that's another one of the key principles of middle schooling, and that's about doing things in depth and doing them with greater academic rigour rather than, you know, trying to go for coverage.